Before you start building your website, your landing page, or your funnel, you need to understand the basic structure of how the designing platforms work. Although this example that I'm going to give you is fairly generic, most systems or platforms work exactly the same. They've got the same principles and idea behind them. All of them start with a main block section, which is a huge container that will contain different columns and elements inside of your page. Inside of your block section, you can then have columns or rows, and you can have multiple columns. You can have, in some systems, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 columns next to each other and different rows underneath each other. And inside of these columns and rows is where you would add your widgets or your elements. Your widgets or your elements typically will be your headlines, your text, your body copy, your images, your videos, your countdown timers, your forms, your buttons. Those are the widgets and the elements that you would build into the columns inside of the blocks. Now, on a typical website or a landing page, you would have multiple blocks. For this example, we're going to use 4 different blocks. Inside of those blocks, we're going to add in some columns. So in the first block, we're going to have 1 column with 1 row. In the second one, we're going to have 1 row with 2 columns next to each other. In the next one, the same. The spacing is a little bit different. And in the bottom one, we're going to have 3 columns next to each other in a single row. And in each one of them, we're going to add some widgets. So you can see in the top one, even though we have 1 column or row, we can add 2 widgets or elements next to each other. In the next block section, in the left-hand row or left-hand column, we've got 1 big element, and in the right-hand side, we've got 3 elements underneath, and so forth. You'll see in the bottom, at the bottom, we don't even have an element in the middle. That will be an empty block, and you'll see what it looks like with the design. As mentioned earlier, inside of these widgets or element blocks, you can now add in your images, logos, text, videos, whatever you can think of that your system allows you to add in, you can add in. So if we populate this with a bit of an example, in the top we've got a logo, next to that we've got a headline. In the next block we've got an image, next to that image we've got a headline, some copy, and a button, a call to action. Underneath that, we've got another headline with copy underneath it, an image on the right-hand side, and then for the footer side of this page, we have a bit of an inspirational thing with an image on the left-hand side, an empty space, and your typical footer menus, disclaimers, privacy policies, contact information, those kinds of things. So this is a fairly simple or simplistic example of what a page would look like. Now, if we remove the guidelines, this is what the page would look like eventually. So when you view your pages, you don't see the blocks and the elements and the containers, but they are there. This is again what the wire diagram looks like. The wireframe of this design. So this is how you would typically use a pen and paper and decide, what am I going to add on my website? And this is what I want you to think about a little bit before you start building any page. What do I want to put on this page? Take a piece of paper and a pen, make a line diagram like this. Draw out, I want an image here, I want a text there, I want a button here, I want my logo over there, a headline, a call to action. Pre-design and get a bit of an idea on a piece of paper. Then sketch out, scribble out a few ideas. Populate those blocks with what is your headline that you want to add in, what image do you have in mind, and then when you start building, you can actually just copy that content into the template that you chose. And it will also make it easier for you. If your system do have templates, you can decide what template is the closest to your design that you drew on paper, so that you spend less time editing, trying to figure out what you're actually going to put into your landing page. And that is it. This is the basic principles simplistic explanation, but this is the basic principle on how any website, landing page, or funnel builder software works.